Walls are triggered by emotions. Walls are not things around our heart that we consciously make it a point to say, I'm going to have a wall up, I'm going to be guarded and distant, I'm going to make sure. I mean, sometimes people say that, but most of the time that's not how they form. They form from a place of being hurt. Hey, this is Bob Grant. So let's talk about this time the walls around my heart. And we had this discussion in the Woman Men Adore group, and it goes something like this. I've had a poor relationships in the past, and because of that, I learned to be guarded. I've had bad things happen to me, and it hurt really bad. And I made it a point not to be too vulnerable or give too much or overdo it. And I became really cautious. But now that I'm in a relationship with someone that I really like, I find it hard to lower my guard. I find it hard to give the benefit of the doubt. I've worked really hard at it. I've tried to be gracious. I've worked on leaning back and leaning into my feminine energy, but it's just so hard at times. And I'm not sure what to do because it's frustrating. Perhaps I should just keep doing more of this, and over time, everything is going to get better. So I understand the thought with that. And it's not that leaning back is a bad thing. In general, it's a very good thing. But I want to talk about why walls come up and what works toward lowering those walls and what can work but doesn't work as well. So, number one, if we're talking about a wall, when we have a wall up or we're guarded or we're apprehensive, the reason we're feeling that is because part of us feels like we need to be protected. Walls come up inside of us because we've been hurt or something bad has happened or we've seen something bad happen with someone else. And because it hurt really bad, it's just a natural reaction to be guarded to that. Whether it's someone that's cheated on us, whether it's someone that treated us poorly, whether it's someone that led us along for so long, or that we gave chance after chance to, and they disappointed and disappointed. Each one of those disappointments is like a small cut. It won't kill you, but it adds up over time. And with each one, that protective part of us kicks in. It says, wow, let's don't experience this again. Let's don't make this mistake again and give someone too much of a chance or be naive or pretend that stuff that's painful really isn't painful. No, and to make sure this doesn't happen again, let's put a layer around our heart. Now, for those that have been through the campfire program, we have a name for this, and we call this person Esther. And Esther is the part of your brain back here in the very back that's designed to protect you. And that's her job. And there's nothing wrong with Esther. Thank goodness we have this. If we didn't have that protective part, we'd say yes to everything. We'd be agreeable to whatever anyone suggested. We would have no boundaries. We would have no self-esteem. So having Esther, that part of our brain, is a good thing. The other side of Esther is that she tends to be overprotective at times. Esther tends to magnify whatever we want her to do. So if I've been hurt and I've gone through trauma and I start promising myself that I'm not going to get hurt again, or that men are just mean or men are just cruel because that's been my experience, Esther says, I can help with that. I can put a wall up around your heart that gets rid of all the bad guys, that gets rid of all the ones, so that only someone worthy and someone that's good for you is going to actually take the time to climb that wall. Now, I know you don't consciously say this, but that's generally how walls form. As part of us learns, wow, I don't want to have someone get close that's going to hurt me. And that wall forms, and it does keep us safe. I mean, that's her doing her job. When I've got a wall up, it becomes much harder to hurt me, much harder to take advantage of me. Now, the problem with this is once we start erecting walls, remember, Esther's job at that point is just to keep you safe. That's not her job to help you find a wonderful man. That's not her job to help you fall in love. No, it's safety above all else. And the reason why we pointed to the back part of the brain is that's where your heartbeat is controlled and breathing, all unconscious processes, things that you don't have to think about doing, fight or flight. It's all about survival. And when we want to be really logical with fears, it doesn't work really well. The survival part always takes over. And so we have this first part that is it safe? Yes, Esther can make it safe. And so I have this in place and it works. It does keep me safe. And this works fine until we get in a relationship, until we want to fall in love, until we meet someone that's wonderful or we think could be wonderful. And that wall is still in place. We might not even be aware of it. In fact, that wall may go down, except for, and this is point number 2, walls are triggered by emotions. Walls are not things around our heart that we consciously make it a point to say, I'm going to have a wall up. I'm going to be guarded and distant. I'm going to make sure. I mean, sometimes people say that, but most of the time that's not how they form. They form from a place of being hurt. And all of us have been hurt to some degree. So no one is immune to this. Some have been hurt more than others. Again, the reason for having a wall is not the problem. Walls are there to protect. Someone with no walls, we said, is in trouble. Someone with no walls would do anything anybody says. So walls aren't bad. Walls become bad when they're rigid or they're overused. So if walls are triggered by emotions, then anything that feels similar to when it first started is going to trigger that wall. And all the logic in the world, I'm just not going to do it. I'm just going to be more open. I'm going to lean back. Again, all good things, but logic alone is not enough. You have a part of your brain, Esther, that's hardwired to keep you safe. And Esther will override logic. Esther, it doesn't matter. And one of the best examples of this is if we use this with phobias. People know in general that driving in a car is safe. But there are some people terrified of driving a car. They know it's safe. They know it's really safe. Flying in the airplane is the same thing. They know statistically it's really safe to fly in an airplane. They're terrified to get in. And the more logic you use, what happens is, oh, you're right. This shouldn't bother me. This shouldn't scare me, but it does. Now I feel worse because I can't control it. I even know it's not a problem, but I'm still scared. In fact, I may be even more scared than that. And now we start an anxiety loop. I don't want it. I get it logically, and then I have to have constant reassurance. Because what's going on is not a logical problem. It's an emotional one. Is there some truth to every fear? Most of the time, yes. Could the plane crash? It could. It's not real likely. Could my boyfriend cheat on me? Could, depending on his history. If he doesn't have a history of that, it's not likely he will. But if I've been cheated on, and I'm so worried about that happening again, or mistreated, or whatever the fear is, when something comes up that either scares me, makes me feel anxious, maybe makes me angry, that wall comes up. Because even though logically I know what he's saying is not the same thing as what's happened to me in the past, it feels similar. It feels scary. It feels rude, whatever it feels. And because I've developed walls, they just kick into place, almost like autopilot. And we blame ourselves, oh my gosh, but that's Esther just doing her job. See, if we fight ourselves and we blame ourselves, I can't believe I'm doing this. Why am I so insecure? All that shaming doesn't help. It just makes the walls get thicker. So just shaming ourselves or saying, I'm just going to work on it, or this is just something that hopefully I'll grow out of, or any kind of story we tell ourselves may make us feel better because we're shaming. It may make us feel better that, well, at least I'm on the path. But what it doesn't do is it doesn't address the real problem. The real problem is there's certain feelings and emotions we're trying to avoid because I don't want to feel scared. I don't want to feel overwhelmed. I don't want to feel anxious. I don't want to feel angry. Because the fear is if I feel that, it will take over. And that may have been your experience. You may have seen people that it took over. When they got angry, they had a temper. When they got sad, they fell apart for days. And we're like, I don't want that. But by shutting off part of ourselves, we're telling Esther, I need a wall to make sure that doesn't take over. I need some type of protection so that I'm not the one that has to actually go through this again. And now we've started the loop. Now, if this is the loop you're in, you can relate to this. The way out of this, and this is what we built the campfire program about, is we actually want to turn toward those emotions. Because feeling them and walking toward them does not mean they'll go out of control. If you'll think in terms of a small child or young child, when they're upset, telling a little girl, don't be sad, doesn't make the sadness go away. It makes her feel worse that she's sad. Telling someone, don't be angry, is the same thing as telling them, don't be hungry. Telling someone not to feel something is the way to make that feeling intensify. When someone learns to walk toward it, which is what we go through in there, we would do the same thing with the child, that it's okay to feel, but what they fear doesn't necessarily come true or is real. So if someone can feel scared, because I'm feeling scared, we actually don't want to try to do a solution there. We want to try to slow down with it. No one likes feeling scared. But one thing with a small child, and I use that because that's a good example with your heart, is with a small child, once they're heard that it's okay to be scared, and since you're the adult, no, we're not going to make radical decisions. So if you're dating someone, it's, I know you're scared. Let's don't give your boyfriend the ultimatum like you typically do when you're scared. Or let's don't ask him 40 questions like you might do when you're really, really angry. We're not saying there's anything wrong with what you're feeling, but we are separating what you feel from what you do. Just because you feel scared doesn't mean you have to act a certain way. Just because you feel angry doesn't mean that what you're afraid of is actually true. Just because you're sad doesn't mean your worst fears are going to happen. Feelings is, I want this feeling to go away. What can I do to fix it? Sometimes this takes courage. Sometimes it takes longer than you think. But most of the time when we're feeling overwhelmed is we want to get permission that it's normal to feel that, and we're just holding on. As much as people want to soothe and feel better, if I'm overwhelmed, I'm not going to feel better in a minute. I'm asking you not to try. If something caught you off guard and your boyfriend said or did something that really looks like what your exes have done, I know that tendency may be to jump to an assumption, oh no, here we go again. Well, maybe. See, that's an opportunity for closeness. And it takes some courage. It takes the willingness to be vulnerable. Again, not transparent, but vulnerable where we're willing to share what's going on. And it shows an opportunity in a relationship that you can be scared, you can be overwhelmed, and you can slow it down, and you can talk it out with him. Sometimes he may not have the words to reassure. Sometimes it may just be you, because most of the time I find what gets people in trouble is when they're feeling really intense and they make really quick decisions based on intensity. Again, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with how you feel, but what you feel and what you do are two different things, and what you feel and what's real are often two different things. They may have similarities, but oftentimes when we're feeling something really intense is we're making assumptions with it. And see, the more times we act out on fears, the more those walls build up. So in addition to leaning back, love the concept, love the idea. It's helped so many women. But just leaning back, oftentimes people do that as an intellectual exercise or a behavioral technique. I'm just going to lean back. Well, if I'm hungry and someone says, just lean back, it's trying to tell me just to pretend I'm not hungry. No, I'm hungry. We want to pay attention to that feeling. If I'm talking with you, I'm asking first what you're feeling. And then what's going on that's causing that feeling? See, a lot of times that's the tougher question. If you're angry, there's a reason you're angry. What are you angry about? If you're scared, yeah, what are you scared about? And oftentimes we don't want to admit it. We don't want to address it. We don't want to say it out loud because we're afraid we don't have a solution to it. So I just don't want to face that. But we have to face that for there to be intimacy. First, intimacy with ourselves. First, authenticity with ourselves. Then we can do that in a relationship. So when someone says they're guarded, my question is, what are you avoiding? You're guarded. What are you afraid of? That guarded serves a purpose. It's not enough to just say, I should stop being guarded. I should stop that. Any more than saying I should stop being hungry. And if you find what you're doing isn't working, this is why most of the time with people's guards, people either work with someone or go through some type of training, because when you're lowering your guard, it's going to feel out of control at times. And having someone there that can normalize it with you and say, yeah, this is normal, this is probably you overdoing it, is much easier than trying to figure it out on your own. Anything new by definition is a little scary and it feels unfamiliar. And the unfamiliar correct path will feel just as awkward as the unfamiliar wrong path. And we don't have a reference point. So having someone you're working with, that's part of their job as a guide, is to actually normalize it with you from their experience, their training, and point out, no, this is the path you want to go down. This one leads to where you want to go, closeness in a relationship, allowing someone to get closer, being vulnerable, being able to actually experience intimacy. Oftentimes when folks are stuck for years, they keep trying to do it on their own. Nothing wrong with that. It's that if you find stuff is going on, most of the time we're stuck in trying and more trying and more trying. So we have three things when it comes to walls. Remember, walls come as a result of fear and pain. There's a pain that's happened. Walls are legitimate. They're there to help us. Walls end up getting bad when they become rigid or we over-rely on them. Secondly, we said walls are triggered by emotions. We can be as logical as we want, but in a relationship, emotions will be triggered. No matter who you pick, no matter how wonderful he is, no matter how fantastic, he's going to stir up emotions. And once emotions get stirred up, they all get stirred up. We don't get to pick the ones we want. The ones we're afraid of will come out too at times because someone gets close to us. And when a man gets close to you, he's going to do things at times that irritate you, at times that surprise you, at times that don't make sense. Most of the time, it won't be on purpose. But he's going to do something that's going to stir up certain emotions that you're not comfortable with. And we can either keep that wall up and keep him at a distance. Some people do that, and they have painfully lonely relationships. And if they're not careful, they'll put the blame on the other person. I wish you would do this more. I wish you would say that more. Why can't you stop being? And they don't take a look at themselves. And they view it that if this person would just act a certain way, I'd be able to relax. The problem is the other person gets tired of trying after a while. After a while, they feel like it's their job, it's their fault, the relationship's the way it is. And they very well may have things that they're doing to contribute. But if we find ourselves that I'd be happy if, or when he would, that's the one we want to do some self-reflection on. Because thirdly, we said, what's hard about walls is we don't often see when we've got them up. We can see them afterwards. And if we just rely on behavioral things to fix them, we can stay stuck for years. That's often why someone works with someone, they work in a group or someone individually. It's when they work with someone, that person has the ability of being objective to point out, yes, this is the thing you want to try that feels uncomfortable. This is the thing you don't want to try. Both feel uncomfortable, but they can guide you down a path so you don't have to go through it alone. All right, thanks for joining us for this, and look forward to seeing you next time. Take care.